All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. So, welcome everybody in to Eight Manufacturing Myths. So, a little bit different of a live event for us. Typically, we're talking about the casting side of things, but as we are part of the manufacturing scope of the United States and the global manufacturing, had some myths out there that we've either heard in passing or questions about in the past, and wanted to have our two expert panelists here, Rachel Weber and Jonathan Johnson from Batesville Products, on to talk through some of those myths that we had. With that being said, any questions you guys have, make sure you post them in the chat. We'll attempt to answer throughout the live event today. We'll try to answer them topically, as there's in relation to slides that we're on. And then if there's anything that we missed, we'll try to capture those answers towards the end of the webinar, or time permitting. Our team will definitely follow up with answers for you guys. For anybody who's not here today, recording, as always, will be made available following the webinar today, as well as the slide deck that you'll be viewing here. As mentioned, we have Rachel Weber and Jonathan Johnson joining us today as our expert panelists. Rachel is the regional sales consultant here for Batesville Products, primarily covering everything east of the Mississippi, not including Michigan. And Jonathan is the regional sales consultant here for Batesville Products as well, covering primarily everything west of the Mississippi, including Michigan. And with that, kick it off to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. This one, like you said, is a little bit different from what we normally do. And just wanted to kind of get into some of the myths around manufacturing. And we thought these 8 points were kind of the keys to focus on. And, the first one right off the bat is that manufacturing is in decline. And, just the numbers don't really, show that. And I know, with Rachel and everything we've been doing, and as far as manufacturing in-house, we haven't seen a slowdown yet.
No, I definitely would say if you just kind of talk to your local suppliers and ask them about their lead times, you'll just hear based off of the lead times, a lot of them are giving that there's definitely not a slowdown. And that there is some reasons to it. A lot of times has to do with hiring and other kind of material shortages. But in general, you're seeing a pickup actually in manufacturing. I know at least for foundries, from the last 5 years, it's been about a 4% increase every year, just a little over 4%, and they have it forecasted to continue to be 4% increase through 2027. So it's on an incline, definitely not a decline in the U.S., but it's changed, like the manufacturing landscape has changed from the past. So it just looks a little differently than how it did before.
Yeah, and I think there was a stat I was looking at, 8.4 or 8.5% of the total workforce is in manufacturing. I think that's, pretty impressive as far as that goes, with producing about 10% of the total output. It just shows how manufacturing is driving a lot of the economy.
Rachel, I think you brought up an interesting stat, and Jonathan hit on it a little bit as well. Because even Jonathan, if you compare the 8.4, 8.5% of the total people, that equates for 12% of the total U.S. GDP in manufacturing. And I think Rachel hit on it with a point that at least from the foundry perspective, we continue to see a growth amongst the market. But what's interesting is, maybe this is where the misconception comes from, that people think manufacturing is on a decline, when in reality there may be less facilities doing it, but those facilities are doing even more and more.
Yeah. All manufacturing jobs are outsourced to other countries. Well, that's definitely not a true fact, considering we are still in operation. But definitely you're seeing, again, kind of similar to the previous slide, it's just a growth in a different way. We're seeing an increase in jobs, and we've grown ourselves with employees joining our companies, and actually have seen, luckily we've had some stickiness this past year on getting some really solid, good operation operational people to be in our company, but we're always continuing to grow. And it's just the type of jobs that we have are changing again a little bit compared to what it was in the past. Whereas maybe an employee on the shop floor is working a robot versus manually doing the job.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at the supply chain and everything else that goes along with that. Everything that we are doing here domestically, the made in the USA type things, really pushing that and just seeing a lot of reshoring. I mean, that's all stuff that's just been happening since we've gotten out of COVID.
I think that's a good point there, Jonathan. I think, COVID brought to light a lot of challenges. A lot of different transportation was shut down, was held up. And I think that uncertainty with a lot of, at least domestic companies and manufacturing, really hit on the reshoring for the United States. I think you compiled that and the uncertainty, of even health regulations in other companies, or not companies, countries, coupled with the tariffs and that change daily, with the political or geo landscape that's going on out there. A lot of different things going on that make it uncertain, that really you see benefits of just reshoring, period, and being local.
Yep.
Not trying to give you guys a softball for number 2 or 3 here, but you talked about reshoring a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say the quality side, you're not looking at lower quality when it comes to US. I think a lot of US manufacturers kind of pride themselves on the quality and where it stands compared to China. And when you look at products coming through, I don't know how that is for you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. I also think the control standards and what you're doing to make sure that you're getting a great product. I think the checks and balances and the certifications that a lot of the companies in manufacturing in the United States are providing, are making sure that you're getting a great product and you're not going to have people, skipping steps.
Rachel, what would be some of the things, and I think we've talked about this in a previous live event, but what would be some things that really go unnoticed, maybe when quoting a project, either domestically or out of the States? What are some things that maybe don't have a direct seen dollar amount to, but really add cost, time, value, versus going domestic?
I think a lot of times it would transportation, the cost of transportation from shipping overseas versus domestically. Also, cost in terms of quality and how much do you build in with your supplier of if they're overseas, if they have a bad quality part or a lot of whole lot of quality parts that are not good. How do you work through getting those fixed so that you have your product on time? Because in the US, it's much easier to work with your supplier to turn around a quality part if it's not working out correctly. It's much easier to hop on a plane to go 2 states over than it is to go overseas to knock on the door and try to get answers.
Yeah, I think that is a huge difference with the amount of communication we have with our customers, and just the ease of being able to get a hold of us if there is a problem. And then a turnaround, like you said, you ship it back, we can fix it if there's a problem. I think that's something that is huge when you're working on trying to manufacture products and hit your timelines.
I think that's a great point. We talked about it in I think the last live event we had. We in our group did as well the other day. We had a prospect in the past that clearly you want to be cost competitive. You have a product that's out in the market. You want to be cost competitive with your competitors. But one of the biggest reasons they were looking was because they had a supplier in China, and their procurement team had to get up in the middle of the night for meetings. So that's not a cost that you would directly see associated with a dollar piece price. But that's the health and well-being of your employees, of your staff, of having to deal with, like Rachel mentioned, if you have a quality part, or quality issue on a part that comes from overseas, are you scrapping everything out? Or are you waiting for the time to send that back and the cost of money to send that back to get it remade? correctly and then sent back into the United States and having to be verified again and the whole time and money that's associated with that. So some good points there, guys, because definitely there's stuff that's unseen when it comes to offshore versus onshore product.
Yep.
Manufacturing is low tech with limited innovation. Obviously from our standpoint, that's not true. We've been, implementing so many new robotic technologies in every department. And I think we're probably not unique in that situation to where it's just helping out immensely with, getting the consistency that, some people can't do, taking the weight off some of our employees. It's been eye-opening to say the least. I was looking at some stats. They were saying robotics in manufacturing is supposed to grow 6% year over year through 2027. That's a lot. I mean, you think about how much everybody's putting in robots where they can, and just really helping to streamline a lot of the processes.
Yeah.
6% seems low.
I know.
I think it's great that it's growing too, because it also kind of goes forward with the new type of employees we're seeing come into the workforce and kind of leverage the skills that they would have versus the employees that we're going to see soon retiring. So it's going to help improve as we get new employees out there.
Yeah, and I think with real quick to finish that fourth slide and then coming over to the fifth is you're helping to finish part of the process and then have the other employees finish the last 5 to 10%. So you're able to kind of take the strain off of the guys working on the manufacturing line, but still provide quality products. And then moving into myth number 5, automation is eliminating manufacturing jobs. We're not seeing that at all. And if anything, it's making manufacturing jobs more attractive because it's diversifying. There's so many different things where you can come into manufacturing and you're not just having, the same jobs. There's so many things with engineering. And I think that's one of the biggest things we've seen over the past 3 to 4 years at our company in particular.
Yeah, I think you hit on it, and I think you guys are giving yourself some softballs here. But you definitely slide before you're talking about the what automation really does for the employees, but it's not eliminating jobs. It's transitioning those jobs into different needs, but it's also extending the longevity of an employee who in the past may have had to lift a 60-pound casting up to a belt, or the risk of sawing a product, even though you have every precautionary measure in place to help the safety side of things. There's a lot of peace of mind built in the robotics and a lot of safety testing done behind the scenes that really helps prop that up and ensure employees can come to work and be safe. But Jonathan, I think you hit on it very well there, that you may not need somebody to do the 100% of the job anymore. They're finishing off the last 10%, but that's still needed. So some of those jobs now may be transitioning into coders and programmers, in robotic specialists, where those employees are still needed. And I think you can look at it even in the current market of open jobs that are still available out there, and even as you come into the end of the year and things start to get back in line with that, there's still millions and millions of open jobs available in the United States in the manufacturing.
Yep. Jobs are low paying, outdated culture, and low diversity. I think that's kind of seen throughout a lot the last 2 years, that low paying jobs is kind of out the door no more. You get a really well paying job, at least through manufacturing in the US. I think they said the average compensation is 8% higher than the total private industry in manufacturing. So I think that's definitely a myth easily busted here.
Yeah, and I think that just with our company as well, I feel like we've got such a great workforce. The people that we have been hiring with, the increase in wages and stuff like that has been, spectacular. And the results are kind of showing as well on the products we produce. Miss Seven, manufacturing is just an assembly line conveyor belt process. And I love this slide because I feel that when we do have a lot of our tours of our facility, I don't think a lot of people understand the processes and how the steps are pretty in depth, and how many things must be done to get from final design to that ship date. And it's just, there's so many different steps and so many different procedures and checks and balances in place that it's not a conveyor belt at all. It's definitely more technical.
Yeah, especially when you speak directly to foundries, you're not going to see conveyor belt system come through foundries, not at least as frequently as you would think you would. And I think we see the surprise on a lot of people's face when they first time stepping into a foundry, of just kind of experiencing what it looks like, first of all, and also they're not as dirty and scary looking as you would think. But it's a lot more labor intensive and a lot more steps along the way than one would expect.
What's interesting about this as well is if you talk, this is a good example of a process it takes to get a product from start to finish by itself. But even if you go back to the onshoring, all the stuff that goes into each individual step here as well. So finalizing a design just isn't, it's ready to go. There's a lot of work done behind the scenes from an engineering perspective, from a assembly engineer perspective, from a manufacturing engineer perspective, doing all the FEAs to get that up and running, building the tools on the next step. But again, you just don't build a tool. You need to have that knowledge and skill in the background to really understand what makes a good tool, and what makes a tool last longer, what makes a tool produce quality parts that the customer is looking for. So there's a lot of additional details that I think goes into this. And Rachel, you're right. I mean, you can go into, there's foundries, and we say conveyor belt process here. You can go into foundries and they'll be putting like sand's a good example. You pull a sand casting out, and they're technically put on conveyor belts, right? But that's not saying that product is done, that product's ready to go to the market. That product has to go through a number of steps still to get to that fully ready to assembled product that you see, at least the 11 steps that are shown here.
Yeah, and I don't think you're pumping out the same product. Every single person who comes to BPI has their unique product that we're making for them. So every single time, the steps are kind of the same, but there's different things that need to be considered for every step of the way. And finishing is a big part of that too. Whether we're doing the interior finishes or we're sending a part out that's unfinished, uncoated. There's just a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I think that's important, Jonathan, because custom products require custom solutions. This isn't, for the most part, castings aren't products that you're buying off the shelf in your local store. We're tailoring solutions to the manufacturing here that somebody's developing a new product they want to put out in the market. It's not something that's I don't want to say it's not repeated, because it's a repeatable process, but it's something that's new. It's something that's out in the market that hasn't been out there before, and it's custom to this client.
Yeah, kind of going back to what I said before, when we have customers or prospects walking through our facility, it's a surprise to them to see that it's not as dirty, dark, and dingy as you would expect it to be. And especially when you're working with alloys such as aluminum, which is a material that is easily recyclable. It's probably one of the most recyclable materials you can use. So it gives you the opportunity to reuse and help, and has the more sustainability aspect that a lot of companies are looking for nowadays.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of initiatives internally as far as energy savings and what we're doing to recycle the materials. That's really beneficial to the environment, and it's definitely not what it is. You mentioned the dirtiness of some foundries. Everybody wants to come to work every day and not be in a dark, dingy, dirty place. And I think we do a great job of maintaining, our foundry and our machine shop, and making it a good place for people to, come and want to show up to work.
Yeah, and especially when you're looking at, like, I think any engineer can attest to this. You're always looking at lean manufacturing and how can you continually improve your process, one, to make it more efficient for what you're doing, and also make it more cost effective for your facilities and for your employees. So it's something I think any engineer in manufacturing understands.
Jonathan, Rachel. So we talked about 8 myths today. What are some other concerns or just generalizations that you've heard about manufacturing, maybe that you guys want to bring up and talk about in addition to what the 8 points that we made? Is there anything that you heard maybe on the news this morning or in the past week that it's just flat out wrong?
You have a picture right there of, students in manufacturing. And I think, one of the things I hear a lot just out and about is, how people don't want to get into manufacturing. And, I think as long as you have something that people are interested in, and one of our people who works for us, Mary, does a great job, and she's been out to some of the schools, and people are just fascinated with manufacturing. I think just educating people on what the opportunities are. There's so much opportunity that people aren't realizing out there. I think that'd probably be my biggest and last one.
Good point, because I think especially on myth 8, where you guys talked about not just from manufacturing perspective, but maybe a foundry perspective, that there's a preconceived notion that they're dirty, dark, dingy. And I think you mentioned Mary going out to these schools, and even our interactions with students in manufacturing. And when we have camps and stuff over the summer, when kids come to visit Batesville Products alone, it's not that, right? It's the complete opposite. And getting students involved and interested at an early age is important. And we've seen a big push to do that by the United States government, by a lot of the different industries that we're involved with in the foundry space. But I think it's education, helping them understand that it's not your old school black facility where there's a bunch of smut everywhere. And like you said, it's dark and dingy, you can't see anything. It's lighted up facilities that are high technology, using robotics, using a lot of the skills that have been developed over the years.
Yeah, and I agree. Obviously, you're not going to get away from getting a little dirty and sweaty in a manufacturing job. It's always going to come with it. But it also, I think, too, you're seeing kind of more people interested in trade schools. Everyone's realizing college is maybe not the answer for everyone. And so kind of resurgence in trade schools, and also just learning again, like the coding, where you can use it in the manufacturing setting that a lot of students are being raised to learn. It's kind of like a second language to them nowadays. And you're seeing it translated into manufacturing nowadays too. So it's just kind of, and also realizing it is a livable wage. You can work in manufacturing and still have a good livable wage working in the industry.
All right. Well, Jonathan, Rachel, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody's time for hopping on today. We did mention a couple of the previous live events that we had discussed, but there are also a number of other resources that you can find either on Batesville Products' website, anything from podcasts to white pages to webinars, video snippets. But feel free to reach out as well with any questions you guys might have in addition to what we had shared today. Again, an interesting topic, a lot of different media outlets and different resources that are saying different things out there. So it's good to clear up the airwaves on some things that are going on here. And Mary had dropped a note in the chat here, but for everybody that is within kind of Indianapolis area, we do have a Design to Part show coming up here October 18th and 19th. It's a great place to meet our team here. We were talking about it early on. We'll have a large group of us up at that that show. But it's also a good place to just chat with manufacturers, chat with engineers, see what's going on out in the marketplace there. All right. Well, thank you for everybody's time today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good one.